August was a great month. Several things changed for me, several things changed for the channel. I may have found my favorite book of all time, but definitely my favorite book of the year so far. Changed some new things, read some good books. So before we go into September, let's talk about the reads of August. The first two books I finished in August were the fifth and sixth installment of Blackwater. This is perhaps my favorite book of all time. Originally published as 6 serialized novels, Blackwater's now been compiled into one volume, and not too many people are talking about that. And it's a damn shame. This book changed me. I fell in love with the characters. I fell in love with the town of Perdido. I loved the atmosphere. I loved Michael McDowell's writing. I picked up several of McDowell's other books after reading this, and it's safe to say this book changed me. We read books because we're looking for change. We want to change a perspective. We want to change in our mood. We want to change in our worldview. And Blackwater, it changed me in many different ways. Loved it. Definitely my favorite book I've read in several years. Perhaps my favorite book of all time. Generally, you want to give these things time, but I feel like it's pretty safe to say this. Southern Gothic masterpiece. Great character work. It's a horror. But there's so much little minutia stuff in here. So many little things happening, so many descriptions, so much political posturing. It mixes elements of a political thriller with a family drama, with a soap opera, with horror, and there's a mystery at the center of it. Perhaps there's monsters and ghosts. Perdido, Alabama, in this book, a pretty creepy place. This book takes place over 5 decades, and lots of things can change within a family in 50 years. I can't wait to talk about Blackwater in its own book review video at length. I want to talk about this more. I want to be able to talk to people that have read this book, which is not too many people that have read this, but yes, Michael McDowell, he's a new favorite author of mine, and you should definitely give him a try. He was gone too soon. The next two books, though not as amazing as Blackwater, definitely changed me. They changed my perspective. They made me change a long-held rule I've had for myself about the books that I tackle. Up until last month, I would never pick up the first book in a series unless the series was concluded. This is trauma because I picked up a Game of Thrones from George R.R. Martin, read it, I loved it, and then I found out that he's been on this long hiatus, and there's perhaps a chance he's never going to finish the series. And I mean, when I say perhaps a chance that he's never going to finish it, I mean, there's a very remote chance he's going to finish the series before he passes away. And that's very sad. But it burned me because I never want to start a story and not be able to get the catharsis that I deserve as a reader. You invest all this time and effort and attention into reading a story, you expect to see the end of it. But then I read Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. And this book's been getting a lot of love on BookTube. This series is very popular. It's very funny. It's put Lit RPG on the map for many booktubers. And after reading it, I can see why. It takes place after the Earth has been destroyed in an apocalyptic event. All the surviving humans are put into this giant maze, and the winner gets their freedom. There are 18 levels. We follow Carl, our protagonist. And Carl, he's a pretty dang good guy. He wants to do the right thing. He feels bad about being forced into this battle royale type of situation. And his sidekick helps him along the way. Why is his sidekick so special? Princess Donut, best in dungeon, is my favorite animal companion in all of fiction. Princess Donut is a talking cat, and she acts like a cat would act if a cat could speak. And Princess Donut is an amazing character. The dynamic between Carl and Princess Donut, amazing. It's a great buddy adventure story told in a very unconventional way. There are great action scenes. There's very funny dialogue. And even though it's a very unserious work, there are great moments of sadness that'll like put you in the dumps just to have you laugh the next paragraph. Matt Dinniman will really like ping pong you back and forth between sadness and laughing out loud several times in this work. I can't wait to continue on with this series. I'm not sure how long the series is going to be going on for, but it's going to take at least 3 or 4 books from what I'm understanding. But yes, Dungeon Crawler Carl was amazing. After reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, I picked up another lit RPG, Critical Failures by Robert Bevan, and I love this book. It's not quite on the same level as Dungeon Crawler Carl, but it holds a very special place in my heart. If you grew up playing D&D, or if you love guy humor, particularly guy humor from like the early 2010s, like if Hangover and Superbad made you laugh super hard, that's a kind of similar humorous feel you'll get in Critical Failures. Robert Bevan, you could tell he loves Dungeons and Dragons, and he wrote this book as a after reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, I wanted to try another lit RPG, and I was not disappointed. I picked up Critical Failures by Robert Bevan, and the premise of this story is a lot of fun. Essentially, a bunch of guys are playing D&D with a new person. They annoy this guy because they're not taking the game as serious as this guy would like, and he uses magical dice to force them to put them into the Dungeons and Dragons world. And there's lots of repercussions because we all do crazy things when we play Dungeons and Dragons. You're a murder hobo. You do things that are very irrational and random because it's fun. And Dungeons and Dragons is all about. After reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, I felt the need to try another lit RPG. So I picked up Critical Failures. After reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, I felt the need to try another lit RPG, so I picked up Critical Failures by Robert Bevan, and I was not disappointed. The premise of this story was a lot of fun. A bunch of dudes are just playing Dungeons and Dragons in a pizza parlor, and they piss off the DM, and he throws them into the game with some magical dice, and they're forced to live with the repercussions of their decisions, because when you play Dungeons and Dragons, if you're familiar with the game, there are murder hobos. You'll have people you're playing with that like won't want to follow the story. They'll just want to kill all the NPCs. And that's what happens. And they're dealing with those repercussions. Lots of hilarious scenes, funny dialogue. If you love humor from like the early 2010s, perhaps like the late 2000s, like Hangover, Superbad, Hot Rod, I think you'll find this book to be very funny. If that type of humor is not what you find funny, I don't think you should pick up Critical Failures. I, for one, love that type of humor, but I realize it's very much an acquired taste in the year 2024. But if you like dude humor and you love Dungeons and Dragons, I think this book will scratch that itch. Robert Bevan also has a YouTube channel where he gives his fans daily updates. I'll link it in the description below. And he plans on this series being 20 books. He just finished the first draft of book number 10. He has a bunch of short story collections in this world, so there's plenty of material to go through as you wait for the later installments. I'm going to be nibbling through this series throughout the next year or so, and no regrets. Even if this series isn't finished for 5 or 6 years, it's worth it, because Robert Bevan, he recently started working a day job, and he was talking about how he wants to finish this series, but now he has to like provide for his family, and he doesn't have the time to commit to writing the series at the speed that he would like. When I watched his YouTube video where he explains why book 10 is taking a long time to come out, it really changed my perspective because I never read series that are incomplete. But after reading this book, I was like, I really should be supporting authors that I like, because if I support them, it increases their chance of them being able to focus solely on their art. And as someone who gets to focus on my art in his day-to-day life, why would I not support someone going on their own artist journey? So yes, Robert Bevan changed my mind. I'll be continuing on with this series until its conclusion. Along with Dungeon Crawler Carl, I have a lot of good lit RPG goodness to look forward to. But yeah, Critical Failures, pretty damn fun time. Butcher's Crossing by John Williams, on the other hand, it was not a lot of fun. It was a very uncomfortable read for me. John Williams' book Stoner is very popular on Book Talk and BookTube, but not too many people are talking about Butcher's Crossing except for Man Carrying Thing. I read it on his recommendation because he's one of my favorite YouTubers and he has very insightful comments on what he reads. So I picked up Butcher's Crossing knowing very little about it except that it was a Western story about hunting buffalo. And it was better than I anticipated, but I enjoyed it a lot less than I anticipated. It's basically Moby Dick, but instead of hunting whale in the ocean, it's about hunting buffalo in the American West. I love animals. I'm a big fan of conservation. I'm a big fan of environmentalism. I was a vegetarian for 5 years. I love animals. I had like 40 pets growing up. The whole, everything. Love animals. So the depictions of violence against nature in this book were very uncomfortable. I won't say triggering because I wouldn't say that's like the right word, but like I did not enjoy myself. The depictions of animal violence, the depictions of destruction of nature made this individual with 2020 sentiments about like animals cringe. I do really love the themes in this book: hubris, pride, waste, destruction. It's a coming of age story. It's about loss of innocence. It's a very literary work. It's a beautiful story. If you love Westerns and you love manly reads, definitely give Butcher's Crossing a try, but I did not enjoy it, but I don't regret reading it. So there's that. After reading Butcher's Crossing, I did something different, did something way out of my comfort zone. I downloaded TikTok because I wanted to study book talk so that way I could make better YouTube shorts for this channel. And then I got sucked in. There's a lot of bad things on book talk. There's a reason why booktubers generally talk about book talk with a lot of disdain. Lots of smut, lots of very shallow discussion about books, but there are still some great hidden gems on book talk. And then I was following one individual, and he recommended this book, My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. The premise I found very interesting. It drew me in right away because I had just finished Blackwater a few weeks ago. And Blackwater tells the story of a family over 50 years. And My Brilliant Friend is the first book in a 4-part series, the Neapolitan series, that details and talks about the friendship between two girls from ages like 6 up until ages like 66. And I love the scope. I love how big that story is. A friendship will change so much in 50, 60 years. Like, I have friends that were the most important thing to me in my life when I was 10 years old, but now we don't even talk when I'm almost 30. So I found the premise very interesting, and this book did not disappoint. This book takes place from like ages like 6 to ages like 18, and lots of life changes for two young girls during those years, and the poverty these girls come from, the lack of opportunities they have, and the neighborhood they come from that's like very rough, and the people around them going and making bad decisions while they're trying to improve themselves, trying to like get rich, trying to go to school, trying to better themselves, trying to escape the trauma and disadvantage of their parents. It's a very engrossing story. Great dialogue, great character work. I can't wait to see these characters grow up across the years because I already feel like I know these girls. I feel like they're like my daughters. I feel like I watched them grow up through their teenage years. So yes, I understand why the Neapolitan Quartet is considered to be a modern day classic. I'll probably be finishing this series in the last month or so of the year. But yes, if you love like the movie Luca, I think you'd really love this book. I realized during the editing process that I forgot to say what the book of the month was. It is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. Despite Blackwater being the best book I've read this year so far, it was already my book of the month last month, and I was, kind of betting on Blackwater being amazing, and it feels wrong to make it the book of the month 2 months in a row. So Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman, best book of August, but Blackwater, best book overall. Surprisingly, I didn't read any manga in the month of August, but I did read the first volume of The Boys. And wow, what a graphic, unsettling, inappropriate comic about bad superpowered individuals. And I loved it. I watched the first 8 episodes of The Boys a year or so ago, and I didn't get to continue on with the TV show because it's very inappropriate, and I got children. Not watching The Boys while my kids are walking around, that's a bad dad move, but I could read the comics in a way that's very clandestine. So 1 volume down, 11 volumes to go. I definitely want to finish that in the month of September because what a wild ride. What an entertaining story. I can't wait to finish the comics and then watch the TV show and compare and contrast them. I think that could make for some interesting content. While we're still on the topic of September, my main focus for next month, along with finishing The Boys, is reading this big boy, The Stand by Stephen King. One of my best friends recently read Billy Summers and discovered that he loves Stephen King. So we decided to pick up The Stand. We're going to read it together. I look forward to doing my first read-along with somebody because when you make reading a social activity, it's twice the fun. But because The Stand is huge, it's a giant doorstopper of a book, it's going to be very hard to focus on other substantially long reads. So definitely going to be finishing The Stand. and probably tackling a lot of short stories and other short content, maybe some novellas, maybe some comics, along with the boys. Maybe I'll pick up some manga. I think September is going to be a great month. I think lots of short works, refocusing on shorts content here on YouTube. The book talk, I think, is going to be a lot more successful, a lot more grounded next month. And I look forward to trying to convert book talk fans to my booktube and back and forth and trying to create a better community here for all of us to enjoy. I look forward to seeing what the stories have in store for me. This month was great. Next month's going to be even better. And I can't wait to talk to you guys about it.